Hey folks, I'm down in the basement. I'm gonna shoot for about 50 minutes on this video because usually when we're in class, I don't know if it's obvious or not. I kind of watch you guys to like I'll pause and stuff as I'm lecturing and kind of like when the last person sort of stops writing, I'm like, okay, we're kind of good to go on. I don't have that cue right here, and I'm probably gonna, I don't know, I'll try not to, but I might talk a little faster just, because I'm talking to myself down here. So I'm just gonna talk for 50 minutes thereabouts. And class is usually an hour and 15 minutes, so I'm figuring that we'll cut a little earlier than we normally would because you have the ability to pause while I'm talking and kind of moving on from there. So, um, all right. That's so I can kind of see me a little and watch my time. I'll stick that up here. Maybe I don't even know if it'll change slides if I do that. Anyway, whatever. Anyway, last time we left off with the Haymarket riots, and after that bomb was thrown on the second day of protests, where the rioters were protesting for an 8-hour workday as well as police brutality. I think I mentioned it the other day in class that when the bomb was thrown, several cops, I think one or two were killed right away, like immediately, and then several more died from their injuries. And the police opened fire on the crowd. They didn't try to like, hey, we got to lock this down, search everybody to try to find the bomb thrower. They just start shooting, and you know, people run and they run away with their injured and they run away with their dying, and so we don't have a good idea of exactly how many people were killed. Best estimates that I've seen are 4 to 8, but I don't even know where those numbers came from. Probably just people at the time guessing. Um, I imagine, and again, I don't know, but this is 1886. There's probably not a law on the books at that time that says if you go to the hospital with a gunshot wound that that has to be reported to the cops. I don't know. It's on TV anyway. uh, I think there's a law in the books today that if you go to the hospital with a gunshot wound, that's got to be reported to the local cops. There's probably not that, and honestly, you know, 1886, most people that going to the hospital at this time is not really a good gamble. Medical technology is not that real far along. And so most people probably like, I will take care of this stuff at the house. So that said, the bomb thrower is not arrested. There are some suspicions I've seen, one person or the other is suspected of being that, but we still don't have a this is the person that threw the explosive device. But the people that organized the Haymarket riots, the publishers of these leaflets that say, hey, come down to the McCormick plant. It's out in front of the McCormick plant. That say to come down to the McCormick plant. We are going to fight for our rights and we are not going to accept no for an answer. Well, those people are arrested because, and we laws today sometimes work this way as well. If you lead people to violence, if you are promoting violent speech and stuff, you can be held responsible for that. And so in this situation, the prosecutors are going to argue that the organizers of this, these socialists and anarchists, uh, are going to be charged with ultimately the death of those cops. Um, 8 out of the or seven, sorry, numbers. 7 out of the 8 are going to be sentenced to death after the trials. One of the 8 people killed himself during the trials, and so that's why you get 7 out of the 8 are sentenced to die. Uh, you don't have to remember these numbers, but 4 of them are hanged, and then later on, 2 of them are commuted to serving life in prison. Like, we're not going to execute you, but you are going to be in prison for life. Um, Now, big thing, big, huge thing. The Knights of Labor, that union that we brought up a couple of slides back, the Knights of Labor were seen as one of the big organizers, one of the big connections for Haymarket. Since that's the case, scribbly down kind of a thing, likes to show up in multiple choice stuff. Since they have this sort of connection to what went down at Haymarket, the Knights of Labor is going to lose membership really, really quickly. Most people, the authorities, whichever way you feel about the cops, the authorities are coming down on these folks. And, if you don't really want to be connected with a group that the authorities are going to come down on. And so, a lot of people are going to distance themselves from the Knights of Labor. Some people very, very, very likely remove themselves from the Knights because they don't agree with the direction that the Knights are going. The Knights do propose, and probably not complete, but near complete overthrow of the free market system. It's not working for the working poor. It's just not. And so some people do, the Knights especially. Hey, we've just got to rework the entire system. This stuff isn't working. It's this whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps ain't working for us. And so some people distance themselves for that reason. But anyway, so the Knights die off. The next couple of years, scribble this down. You can actually just write down the AFL-CIO, the American Federation of Labor. You don't have to remember the long term. American Federation of Labor is another labor union that is going to emerge as the Knights are declining. The AFL is going to kind of pop up, and they're going to get a lot of attention. And they are going to argue that, look, okay, we don't need to overthrow capitalism. We don't need to go that far, but we do need some changes. We do need greater safety, thoughtfulness. That's probably not really the best way to say that, but we do need to start thinking about safety better. Put some rails around the meat grinders at the Oscar Mayer plant and stuff. We do need greater profit sharing. The workers are the people that make most of the money for these companies. Amazon just purchases stuff from manufacturers and then sends it to us. They don't actually, there's not a lot of doing there, right? There's not a lot of building things, making things, but without the workers, Amazon doesn't run. All those people that go into the warehouses and pick our orders and put them on box them up and put them onto trucks to ship them to us. That's the main thing that Amazon does. But Amazon doesn't really pass a whole heck of a lot of profit to the average worker. And so that's what these people are arguing here is it's us. It's the human labor that enables these corporations to run and make these wonderful profits. And we're not being included in that. And so the AFL, hey, we need greater safety protections. We need greater profit sharing, at least some. We also, hey, let's restrict the work hours. Human beings probably shouldn't work 14 to 16 hours a day for somebody else. We've got stuff to do at our own houses, work and living life at our own houses, home maintenance and hanging out with our own families and stuff like that. So let's work on, lowering the amount of hours that we're spending employed. And so the American Federation of Labor is going to pick up where the Knights of Labor fall off. Later, they will merge with another union, the Congress of Industrial Organizations. I don't know why I can't ever remember their name, but Congress of the Industrial Organizations. So they'll merge and they'll become the AFL-CIO. And they're still around today. And they do a lot of good work and stuff like that. So we're seeing, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, we're starting to see unions, popping up and kind of getting going. And mostly this happens in the North, doesn't so much happen here in the South. There's an effort later, and we'll talk about killing that. But down here in the South, we're not really interested in unions for some weird reason, mostly up in the North. But a lot of the stuff that we enjoy today, like, comes from unions. So let's see. All right, it did work. All right, next up, this is a bit later. This goes down in 1913. So Haymarket riots is 1886. This is 1913. Unfortunately, it's been what, 96, almost 30 years. Not much has changed. Management owners still have the most pull, and we as labor, the average worker, don't have a lot of pull, and so there's not a whole heck of a lot that's going to change, really, unfortunately. So 1913 anyway, out in Ludlow, Colorado. The coal miners out at Ludlow, worked for Colorado Fuel and Iron. Colorado Fuel and Iron. And they go on strike for better working conditions, better wages. The big thing there. Some of their working conditions for Colorado Fuel and Iron, which you don't have to remember this right now, but it will play in here in a second. Colorado Fuel and Iron is owned by John D. Rockefeller. It is part of his empire that he has developed. And, he's super, super wealthy. Why pass on any of those profits to the working people? Or keep them alive. So, couple of things out at Colorado Fuel and Iron in Ludlow. Workers that work for the mine at Ludlow are paid in something called scrip. We are not paying these people in dollars. This is illegal, even in 1913. In 1913 in Colorado, you cannot pay people in coupons. You have to pay them in money. But they're paid in scrip. And what that is, and I jokingly call them coupons, that's basically what it is. It's a little note, basically, that at the end of the week, at the end of every 2 weeks, or whatever the pay period is, the company will give these people, hey, you earned $10. That's probably way more money than they're earning. But you earned $10. Okay, cool. But you don't get your $10. And since you don't have dollars, you can't go to Walmart. The only place that you can shop is at the company store. That's the only place that's interested in taking CFI coupons. Walmart's not going to take CFI coupons. So the only place that you're available that's available for you to buy groceries and clothing and supplies for your family is the company store. Well, man, if I own the company store and you can't shop anywhere else, I don't have any incentive to make my prices reasonable. I'm going to make them super super high, kind of like we did with the sharecropping. I don't have any reason to give you a break. I have every reason to make my prices real high, and so uh, company stores are going to vastly overcharge the miners that come in. You can't shop nowhere else. $15 for a Snickers bar. Um, Also, you don't have money to go and find anywhere else to live. So you live in a company-owned town. I don't have any reason to make my rent cheaper on my company town. I don't have any reason to make my company town really a good structure at all. Like four pieces of plywood, and, maybe stretch a tarred cloth over the roof, over the top of that for a roof. I mean, these are terrible, terrible living conditions, but you don't have a choice. And so I'm going to charge you real expensive for these terrible living conditions. Again, this is illegal, but what, you going to fight John D. Rockefeller in court? That's not going to do anything. So, so really bad conditions. Another couple of things, and you don't have to get this one down, but let's, really, really paint the terribleness of this. The company has two sets of scales. They have one set of scales when you guys as miners, you guys always have the crappy jobs, I'm sorry. When you guys as miners bring your coal out of the mine, I put it on one set of scales. Well, my scales are set to weigh light. And so if you come out, let's say, bad at math, but simplifying now, let's say you come out with 1,000 pounds of coal. My scale is set to weigh 1,000 actual pounds of coal as 900 pounds. And so I'm not going to pay you as much for the work that you actually did. My second set of scales, because I'm competing with other coal sellers, my second set of scales is going to read accurately. And so when I'm selling coal to other people, because they can go somewhere else, that 1,000 pounds is going to weigh out at 1,000 pounds. But I'm competing with other sellers, on the open market. I ain't got to worry about. So for your scale that you see, 1,000 pounds actually reads 900. Work harder. Pull yourselves up by them bootstraps. Now, one that you do need to get down. Mining is very, very dangerous, and one of the risks is roof collapse. Well, so if you're mining, you have to put up braces throughout the mines so that hopefully, it's still going to sometimes, hopefully the roof does not collapse on these folks. Well, that's not actively producing coal. And so, scribbly down on the test a lot of times, this is called dead work. DEAD, actual dead, and work, WORK. You're not doing anything to produce coal. And so, we're not going to pay you for that. You're only being paid when you produce coal. Anything to make sure you don't die in the mines, well, that's not really my concern. And because of that, these people are barely scraping by. And so they don't have time to do a lot of this dead work. And so mining accidents in Colorado are going to be worse than the rest of the country because of this setup. And so, John D. Rockefeller probably doesn't know about all these practices. He might. Honestly, if he did, though, he does not care. There are other instances of him going after miners and other employees at his factories and stuff like that. So very, very much just make as much money as you can. Middle management, I don't care how you do it. So that's horrible. So the miners at Colorado Fuel and Iron attempt to unionize. They join. They try to join the United Mine Workers of America, and they go on strike. I talked about Company Town out of order there. So, but the miners at CFI join the United Mine Workers of America, and they go on strike. Now, they're not working while they're on strike, and it is fall. That plays into in a second. And so since they're not working, they're not paying rent on their houses in the company town. And so the mine owners and the I don't know, company police kick them out of their homes. And so all of these people are turned out of their homes in the fall. And so they move to a big field that's, I think it's off Colorado Fuel and Iron property. I can't imagine it would be on there. I don't know exactly, but I can't imagine it would be on CFI property because they could just be removed from that. So, but they park themselves out in a big field and build this tent city. And this is where they're going to live while they're on strike. Well, man, that's not going to work. And so the company, and I'm sure that Rockefeller knew about this, the company calls out the Baldwin Felts Detective Agency. And the Baldwin Felts Detective Agency, they're private investigators, but at this time, a whole lot of private investigators do a whole lot of strike breaking stuff. The Pinkerton Agency, they're private investigators. They're private investigators today. They were in the news, a couple of years ago for busting into somebody's house and taking some Magic the Gathering cards that the Wizards of the Coast accidentally sent to that person. Pinkertons, though, they're strike breakers. A lot of private investigating companies are strike breakers right now. So, the company calls Baldwin Felts to break this strike. We need these people to come back to work. Yes, we can hire more people, but it's kind of a hassle. So we just need to break this strike, make these people uncomfortable as possible. If you got to kill some, you got to kill some. And so the Baldwin Felts company agency, they built a car. They do all kinds of other stuff, but the biggest thing that gets your attention is they built a car called the Death Special. They called it the Death Special. It's a Ford Model T truck, and they put armor plate, just, thick steel around the cab, probably want to armor up the engine. And there's not really a whole lot of firearms control laws at the time. They also, in the bed of the truck, they mount a machine gun, like a fully automatic machine gun that you as an individual would have a little bit of a tougher time buying today. But they mount a machine gun in the back of the car, and the miners in the tent city are down in this kind of, it's not really a valley, but it's a low spot, and there's a hill that runs sort of right next to this valley with them down there in it. And the Baldwin Felts guys will drive up and down, parallel to the tent city, and fire down into the tent city, like at the miners, at their families. During one of these strafing runs where they're firing down into the tent city, they killed a little girl and they shot a little boy in the legs 9 times. They just tore this kid up, two kids. But these people aren't coming back to work. I don't know what you really, you want me to pay them more or something? That's crazy. So, um, and this gets out of hand. That's a little bit whoa extreme. And so the governor of Colorado calls in, he mobilizes the National Guard. And so the National Guard is dispatched and they're trying to sort of run interference, at least keep Baldwin Felts away from the miners. You don't have to get this down. The miners do have some firearms, but they're like, single shot shotguns, several revolvers, like nothing on the same level as a machine gun mounted in the back of an armored truck. Um, they don't have that. They have some rifles, single shot shotguns, stuff like that. They can fire back, but it's not as effective. And so the National Guard stays out there for a while, and that's expensive. It's expensive for the state of Colorado, to pay the National Guard to stay out there. And so after a while, probably a month or so, I'm not exactly sure how long it was they stayed. After about a month or so, the governor has to do something, because we can't just leave the National Guard out there forever and pay them, because that costs a lot of money. And so the Colorado Fuel and Iron comes up with a solution. Hey, you know what you could do is you could just swear all of the Baldwin Felts guys into the National Guard real quick, and they can keep the peace. And I don't know if it's just a lack of care or fed up with the situation, but the governor's like, yeah, that sounds great. And so the Baldwin Felts guys are now the National Guard, and they're supposed to police the Baldwin Felts guys from murdering the miners. And so the governor withdraws the National Guard. You don't have to get the date, but on April the 20th of 1914, they have been at this strike for about 6 months now, at least. The Baldwin Felts guys come out with their new, weapons from the National Guard and their equipment and their spiffy uniforms, and they set up and they actually just start firing down into the tent city. This is now a pitched battle. And wildly, there's a train track that runs between the hill and the tent city, and a train is lumbering by, and the engineer sees what's going on, and in an act of incredible bravery stops the train in the middle of this battle, of these people that are firing at these people in these tents. Holy cow, that's just messed up. So the engineer stops the train, and it gives enough time for the miners to flee, and they're going to take off. Because if they tried to flee before, they would have been picked off by the Baldwin Felts guys. So the miners take off, and then the train resumes on its way. And after that, though, the Baldwin Felts guys, now the National Guard, move into the tent city and they burn it down. Hey, if these people don't have anywhere to live, they'll probably come back to work, right? Yeah, cool. So the Baldwin Felts guys burned the tent city down. Well, they didn't know, and I also don't think they would have cared given what they were doing 20 minutes ago. But they didn't know that there were, in those tents, still hiding, scattered around, were 2 women and 11 children. And they burned the tent city down anyway. And so that burning of the tent city down and killing those 2 women and 11 kids, on top of the little girl that they shot the other day, and strafing the little boy with 9 bullets to the legs, this becomes known as the Ludlow Massacre. And something that I think is really, really cool is that after the news of this gets out, Upton Sinclair, the guy that wrote the, oh man, there we go, In the Jungle. Upton Sinclair, the guy that wrote The Jungle, goes to John D. Rockefeller's house, and he is just beating on the gates outside of the house, screaming at the top of his lungs that John D. Rockefeller will pay for what he has done out in Colorado. Well, man, rich people don't have consequences. So John D. Rockefeller is not going to pay for that. But Upton Sinclair, went to his house and is just beating on the gate and screaming that he would pay for it. So we do have more and more strikes. We'll talk about a couple of more strikes in the future, but things don't really get better for a while. Eventually, we'll get to a 40-hour work week. That's kind of the standard. Most people work an 8-hour work day. If you don't, you get overtime after 40 hours. But that doesn't happen for a very long time. It's like in the 1950s or 60s or something like that we start doing actual changes. So, all right, let's go into the next slide. That's a Dungeons and Dragons cover. I'm not. Why won't you go there where I want you to go? Why is this going on? Open that one. Yes, do it. Maybe you're not because I'm angry. There we go. Okay. If you are following along on the slideshow, this is 7.2 Mary Mallon. We're rewinding a little bit, but we're right in the middle of those strikes. Haymarket was 1886. Ludlow was 1913. This issue is going to start in 1906, and we'll probably talk about Mary, and I don't know if we'll get into building the railroads out west or not. We're not really in building the railroads. We're more about immigration stuff, but you'll see when we get there. So anyway, this is a very cool lecture. I really like doing this lecture because I was doing this lecture prior to COVID, and it was kind of neat because prior to COVID, most people were familiar with germ theory that, bacteria or viruses cause most illness. Not all illnesses, but most illnesses are caused by, little bitty germ guys that we can't see that infect us and cause us to have illnesses and stuff like that. Most people had heard about that. Most people hadn't really heard about healthy carriers before the pandemic. And so I would run through and explain healthy carriers. If you have zero idea what this is, like we saw with COVID, it's a person that has this infection, but they don't have any symptoms of it. For some reason, their immune system keeps it just enough in check where they don't have symptoms, but they can still spread the disease, the bacteria or the viruses. And most people weren't really familiar with healthy carriers, but now since COVID, kind of neat, we sort of understand healthy carriers and have familiarization. There's a fancy word with that. And so, cool. So this is going to go down in 1906 off of New York City. New York City's right there. And off of New York City, there is a vacation spot called Oyster Bay. It's right here. In the summers, lots and lots of wealthy people go to Oyster Bay and they will spend like almost the whole summer there and vacation out in Oyster Bay. And it operates a lot like it does today with kind of Airbnbs almost. These people will rent a house for the summer and hang out there. And a lot of times, these are really wealthy people, and so they'll take their gardener with them. They will definitely take the cook with them. They'll take, a maid and a butler with them on vacation. Not for these people to vacation; those people are working. So the cook's going to be cooking every night. The maid and the butler, cleaning up the house and making sure the clothing and stuff's all set. We're not letting those people have vacations. What's wrong with you? Uh, so, at this one particular house out there in Oyster Bay, almost everybody in the family comes down with typhoid. Typhoid is on the slide back. Yeah, you can actually see it on there. Typhoid. Uh, Most everybody in the house comes down with typhoid. And typhoid, I'm not going to get real graphic, but typhoid is transmitted in something called the anal oral route. Somebody with typhoid goes to the bathroom, and along with their feces, they are shedding typhoid bacillus. And that gets on your hands when you clean up. And so, unless you wash your hands really, really good, if you have typhoid, please wash your hands anyway. But unless you wash your hands really, 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 really good, somebody with typhoid can then transmit it to someone else. Hey, shaking hands, I'm preparing your food and you're eating that food. Things like that will transmit typhoid. Now, a lot of times in the city, typhoid is kind of a disease of the poor. The plumbing's not real great. The plumbing is leaking. So when people go to the bathroom and they go to the bathroom, the plumbing leaks, and then whatchamacallit, uh, then it leaks into the incoming drinking water, and that kind of, gross. But you get typhoid that way. Well, so this the owner of the house calls in a couple of New York health inspectors. They're very close. We can call these guys out, and so uh, they come in for. Sorry, somebody called me, and so I need to. Uh, So they call in the New York City health inspectors. They inspect the plumbing to make sure it's not a plumbing leak, and that's where we've got typhoid. That's fine. They check the shellfish in the bay, oysters and shrimp and all that stuff. All of that stuff's delicious, but it's bottom feeding. And raw oysters are absolutely delicious. You put a little bit of lemon juice, a little bit of Tabasco, and those things are fantastically awesome. But they're raw. And if you're just dumping sewage into the bay, there's a possibility, you know. Well, they don't see anything there. They test the oysters, they test some of the other shellfish down there. Everything seems okay, and so they can't figure out what it is, but it's not the plumbing, it's not the shellfish. Well, think about this, and this is another cool thing that we saw during COVID. There was a lot of speculation that the cruise line industry would not survive, right? Because the cruise lines, uh, everybody's packed on there and stuff, and if you get any kind of illness or something on a cruise ship, it's the air is recycled through the ventilation system. You've got everybody packed in close and all that, and especially in the early, I don't know, month or two of COVID, It was the cruise lines were really, man, they were petri dishes. And so there was a lot of speculation um, among newscasters and stuff that the cruise line industry probably would not survive. One, they're going to take a hit during COVID, but also everybody saw how fast disease circulates. It turned out to be fine, but the cruise lines do take stuff a lot more seriously now, I think, than they used to. So, but similar like to that though, this homeowner up in Oyster Bay is freaking out because I have a rental house that I make money off of, and if it sort of becomes known as the typhoid house, no one's going to want to stay there because y'all, typhoid, if left untreated, has a 10% mortality rate. One person in 10 that gets typhoid during this time period and in undeveloped countries today will die of that. So you don't want, this to be known as the typhoid house. And so he calls in a private health inspector. He calls in a guy named Dr. George Soper, and that's an actual picture of George Soper. The picture of Mary Mallon down there with the meat fork, that's an actress that played Mary Mallon on another documentary. We'll see a picture of Mary later in life anyway, here in a second. But the homeowner calls in Soper, and Soper, goes through the medical stuff from the health inspectors, and everything seems okay there. And then he starts looking through the family members and the employees, and which one of these people got sick and which ones didn't. Is there anybody that's not working for the family anymore that was at the time but's not with the family anymore? And there's only one person that fits in that was working for the family when they were at the house, but's not there anymore, and that's this cook named Mary Mallon. Now, a thing before we go down this road, um, we've talked about this. Well, no, I don't think we have here yet, actually. Oh, that's kind of wild. Um, Women don't have equal rights currently, in 1906. Women do not make as much money as men by a long shot. So, career opportunities and any kind of opportunities for women are going to be very, very limited. Um, just to kind of get an example, and you don't have to get it down, but a seamstress, the most common, occupation for women that's outside of the home, a seamstress can make 3 shirts in a week. Okay? A common sex worker that just picks up one person can make the same amount as that seamstress that is making 3 shirts in a week. So the pay is that low. And so a lot of times, not because they're morally bankrupt or anything, this is out of desperation. If somebody gets sick and they're a seamstress, they may have to occasionally foray into occasional prostitution to make ends meet. If you don't have any other choice but to feed your kids to do this thing, a lot of people will make sure that their children are fed. And so laundress and seamstress, man, that pays very, very low wages. Well, Mary is a private cook, and she's apparently very good at it. And this is one of the highest, for the average woman, this is one of the highest wages that an average person could realize for a woman at this time. And so a threat to Mary's livelihood where she can't cook anymore is going to be a serious thing. Keep that in your head. So, anyway, so Mary's a private cook for families, and over the last 10 years, she has worked for 8 families, and in those 8 families, 6 people have had somebody to get typhoid. And the current family that she is working with, I don't know, there's a little girl. She's got typhoid. And so, yeah, Mary is unknowingly transmitting typhoid to all these people. And so Soper finds this information out and he is going to pay Mary a visit. Now, I want to finish Mary Mallon's story, then we'll cut. So we will go a little over 50 minutes, sorry. So Soper finds out where Mary's cooking now, finds out that there is a little girl that has typhoid now, and he goes to the house. Now, check this out. Think about this. Put yourself in Mary's position for what's about to happen. This is a strange guy that you don't know who he is, and he has some paper identification, but I don't know if Mary can read. Probably can. But still, I can write that I'm a private medical inspector. Doesn't mean anything. So Soper goes into the kitchen. He introduces himself. He says, "Hey, I'm Dr. George Soper. I think that you are this new thing that the medical community is sort of thinking is a possibility. I think you might be a healthy carrier for typhoid. And I think that you are accidentally transmitting typhoid to all of these people that you're cooking for." And Mary retorts that, I've never been sick in my life. There's no way. Remember, we heard this during COVID. I'm not sick. I can't have COVID. you know. And Mary says, I've never had I've never been sick. I can't be transmitting typhoid, whatever the heck, to these people. And Dr. Soper says, well, I think we should investigate and I want to prove it. And again, this is somebody that just walked into your kitchen where you're working and you don't know them and you don't really suspect, they don't have any evidence that they're actually legit, possibly. And Soper says, I need a stool sample and a sample of blood. So he's asking her for her blood and some poop. Some random dude walks into your workplace asking you for some blood and poop. I think even today, that would, somebody walks into my office on campus, I'll be like, no, I don't know what. So she does pick up that meat fork and chases him out of the kitchen. She's like, get the heck out of here. You sound like some kind of creeper. Leave now. But this is the thing, though. We suspect that this lady is not on purpose transmitting typhoid to people. And so Soper goes away and he reports back to, his people that I don't know what's going on. He reports back to the health department. And the health department is going to find an incredibly rare person, one of the very, very few women doctors in the United States that works for the New York Health Department is Dr. Josephine Baker. The idea is that and it's a solid idea, this lady, Mary Mallon's probably been abused by a lot of men. She doesn't trust men, understandable. And so let's send a woman there. And this woman probably wouldn't be as threatening. And so maybe she'll react different, at least not pick up a meat fork. And so Dr. Josephine Baker goes out to the house. Now, meanwhile, remember that little girl that had typhoid that's in the new house that Mary is currently cooking for? She's since passed away. So Mary she doesn't know it yet, but she has inadvertently, her actions in carrying this disease. I try to be very careful in how I phrase this. Her actions in carrying this disease and not realizing it has resulted in a death. It's not her fault, but that's what's happened. So anyway, Dr. Baker goes into the kitchen and tells Mary, "Hey, we are trying to investigate this." Mary tries to run away, but second smart move. They have brought a couple of police officers and they arrest Mary and take her to a hospital. Um, that's my 50-minute timer. We're gonna finish the story though. And so they take her to the hospital, and Mary is positive for typhoid. She is a healthy carrier. Holy cow. This is a big thing for this story, but also it proves for the scientific medical community that people can be healthy carriers and not have symptoms. And so Mary can't be allowed to be in the public really, because people can die from stuff that she is doing. And so she can't be preparing food and be among the population. So scribbly down, really, really important. She is going to be confined to North Brother Island in New York Harbor. Don't have to remember this, but North Brother Island is fairly close to Rikers Island. Today, Rikers Island is a prison island. I don't know if it was at the time, but North Brother Island is a tuberculosis quarantine hospital. Tuberculosis is highly, highly contagious. If you get it, you very likely will die at this time. Today, we will treat you with heavy doses of antibiotics. But at this time, it's highly, you know, very, really likely you're going to die. So they send a lot of the tuberculosis people over to North Brother Island. Well, they're going to send Mary over to North Brother Island because she's infecting people. And one of the things they do, scribbly down, is look, she's only a problem if she's in the state of New York, right? If she's cooking for people in New York. And so the health authorities actually go to Mary a couple of times. Hey, wouldn't you like to go visit your sister in Connecticut? And Mary comes back at him kind of confused. I don't have a sister in Connecticut. That's fine, but wouldn't you like to go and visit your sister in Connecticut and leave New York and not come back to New York, but go and hang out with your sister in Connecticut? In Connecticut, that is not in New York. Go and do that, right? And Mary does catch on, but she refuses. She wants to be exonerated. She wants to show everybody that she is absolutely not guilty. Um, well, she is going to be confined to North Brother Island for 3 years. Um, a couple of things happen at that. Let's see. She's I think it's 1907 to 1910 that she is confined to North Brother Island. A couple of things happen. One, you don't have to remember either one of these, but we get a new health commissioner. And this new health commissioner's like, I don't know if that's the right thing to do for this person. And the other thing is they realize that there are other kinds of healthy carriers. There's other healthy carriers of typhoid in New York City. Now, here's the thing. They're not working as cooks. They're working as laundresses. They're working as bricklayers and stuff like that. As long as they're not cooking for people, they're not spreading it, unless they're poking their hands in people's mouths. They're not spreading typhoid. And so they tell Mary, we will let you go, but you can't cook anymore. And they retrain her as a laundress. Now, if you'll remember back at the start of this, I said that cooking is the high end of women's earning potential and laundress is near the bottom. And so we have really smushed her ability to make money. Oh, there's some of that stuff. And she has to check in with the the health department, and she does that for 3 years. And in 1913, the health department, the health commissioner and stuff, they all lose track of her. They don't really hunt her down, but they lose track of Mary Mallon. And then in 1913 at Sloan Maternity Hospital, like Huntsville Hospital for Women and Children, where, if you can get over there and you're about to have a baby, that's kind of the place to go to have a baby. This is that. So, Sloan Maternity Hospital is this hospital in New York where women go to give birth. Um, Infants, tiny human beings, are very, very susceptible to illness. They are on the knife edge, man. And if you dehydrate an infant, that is really, really dangerous. Well, typhoid, you develop a lot of diarrhea and it dehydrates you. So this is holy cow dangerous. Well, in 1913, 25 people at Sloan Maternity Hospital pop up as positive for typhoid. In the worst place imaginable, we are accidentally spreading typhoid. And Sloan Hospital calls Dr. George Soper. And Soper's like, well, this is transmitted a lot through food. And so his first stop is in the kitchen. And he goes to Sloan Maternity Hospital, goes into the kitchen, and there is Mary Mallon cooking for all of these women that just gave birth, all of the medical people that are caring for all these kids. And she doesn't fight. She just kind of gives up. I've seen another historian just kind of talking about this. She sort of knew that the jig was up, and she surrenders to Dr. Soper. You don't have to get these numbers down, but at this point in her life, she has, and this is the part where I start like, hey, you knew, you might not have agreed with it, but you knew that you were possibly infecting people. And so I have not a whole heck of a lot of sympathy for her right here. When we were back in Oyster Bay, I felt, like, hey, she didn't know. The medical community didn't know. But right here, she was told you were possibly infecting people. Before this, she was told you're possibly infecting people. You can't cook no more. That sucks. That's your livelihood, but you're accidentally killing people, whether you agree with it or not. She has infected 47 people, and 4 of them have died. The one little girl, she didn't know. So I can understand. That's not entirely her fault. But the 3 after that, man, 3 after that, she killed them people, uh, and she knew that she was the possible link in that. You know. So after that, this is our last slide, and I'll cut. After that, she is arrested in 1915, and she will be taken to North Brother Island, and she will be taken there for the rest of her life. She will spend the rest of her life on North Brother Island. That's a picture of her, the larger lady, the taller lady. That's a picture of Mary later in life. She does get a job on the island. She works in the lab, I believe. Not cooking for anybody. She gets a job on the island. She still tries to prove that she is not a carrier of typhoid. She's not successful in that. And what's kind of, you don't have to get this down. I find this interesting is that later, later the authorities over the island will sometimes give her a weekend pass to go into New York, and she'll take the ferry and go to New York and spend the weekend sometimes, and then she always comes back, And I don't know if she's just resigned to I am on this island and that's it, or what, but she has her own little cottage, she has a job, she's free to mingle with the people on the island, but she is confined to this island for the rest of her life. Um, Kind of a similar thing with my great aunt that we mentioned on the first day of class. She's really, really close to the widespread availability of antibiotics. After World War II, 1945, during World War II, they were available to military members, but after World War II, 1945, antibiotics are widespread to the American public. And, if she would have lived a little bit longer, she could have been cured from typhoid and, been free to wander wherever the heck she wanted to wander. So, but she passed away in 1938, and that's about it for her. So, anyway, kind of a neat, interesting discussion, I think, on personal freedom versus, public health and public safety. Where's that line at where your freedoms sometimes might get, you know, squished or curtailed a little bit in the larger quest to keep the larger American public safe. That's kind of a neat sort of line, and we saw some of that with COVID. So anyway, we will cut there and pick up on Thursday. So this will be on Tuesday. I'm also going to upload the study guide here in a little bit. So see you later.